All right, here we go. Oh, Infamy versus Tsunami. I will say that this was the closest match. I will not um spoil who won for anyone who has not watched. I would recommend that you pause the video right now and go watch this match. The link is in the description to the VOD, and all you have to do is fast forward past the matches that we just did, and you can watch it. Now, with that disclaimer being said, I'm going to go ahead and say that this happened on Kawazan, and we're going to go right into the pregame. At any point, I'm going to recommend that if this fight, if this review ever goes past uh the point where the last 10 minutes or so, and you feel like you might want to watch this, I feel like you should go watch it. This is your last warning. Okay, so here we go. This was definitely the most entertaining match of the game, but I'm going to say that it shouldn't have been, and I'll explain why. Me being a part of Tsunami, obviously I'm a little biased, but I always play devil's advocate, to be honest, and so I'm biased in a manner that will help my guild improve. And so I'm going to say that there are a few things I'm going to point out that were not obvious somehow to almost anyone that I talked to after this match, and I'm going to hopefully shine a light on those things today. Because although it was cinema, like I said, and it was very entertaining, like I said, when you're in watching mode, entertainment mode, there's a lot of things you don't pick up on when you have your magnifying glass out. It's just when you were watching this, you could not help but put your magnifying glass down, and I do not blame people for that. And we're going to go over it now. Here at -4 minutes, I'm going to consider Kawazan a defensive sided map. The reason being, I'm going to just say it, choke points. At least traditionally. Now that said, the respawns are very small, but we're going to see now if you've been complaining about the respawn timers in this tournament, or it's kind of perplexing you in this match, you will kind of see how to navigate that issue, and we're going to see very soon. So -4 minutes, plus that opens up. You can kind of see already everyone is already in there with invulns, and they're kind of picking a spot. Now I do think that it ended up in this way, where Infamy, the blue side, ended up either forgetting they had invulns or just not being lost. And Tsunami took the point and spread out along the point with invulnerability. So when invulnerability ran out, Infamy, I guess, found themselves spawning in the choke, and Tsunami ended up bubbles popping on site, and it's just not where you want to be in a choke point. Starting out at a choke point, you see it looks like a frowny face because that is how you should feel. That was about 4 minutes and 30 seconds. The fight broke out. You can see how much of an advantage it actually is. Tsunami actually gets counter tornadoed. You can see all these people here, CC'd everything, but all you have to do is they just sent their tanks in. Their tanks just went straight in. Although these people were completely stunned here, the tanks went right through it. They plug up the choke, and that's one of the ways you can hold a choke. We're not going to get into it too much today. And Tsunami gets fight control. Now this is a good minute after, and I want you to notice that there's no threats. There's no active threats. Tsunami is chilling on the point. Now 15 seconds later, 3 minutes and 15 seconds ago, Tsunami does end up pushing them all the way out. I think this is actually the same engagement. So this actually they pushed them here. I think this is around 4 minutes, and this is around 3:15. So Infamy got pushed out from that push because they plugged up the choke with their tanks and pushed them out, shooting at them through the jail gates here. And Tsunami is still occupied with Infamy. This team that's lagging behind from Infamy, this could generally be considered a mistake to not full reset. You're just potentially risking staggering in perpetuity. But Tsunami, we'll see how this actually ends up being the reason why Infamy get get back into the match. Tsunami is still occupied with Infamy here, and I want to note that the minimap is here, and we can see that Infamy is spawning here. There's a spawn point here, and you can see that all the people who died earlier are now spawning in together. They're not trickling in; they're spawning in together, and they're going to go around the main point the long way, all the way around. And this is going to be absolutely terrible for Tsunami, and we're going to see why. Now, time is still ticking. It is now 2 minutes, -2 minutes and 55 seconds. Another 20 seconds has passed, and Tsunami is still focused on the choke that no one is at. There are 5 people left here on the choke. Maybe some respawns are coming in, but you can see the ants are marching down, and Tsunami is still, look at all these flash waves. Flash wave is the biggest cooldown in the game for killing people. You save it for as many people as possible, and they are using it on 6 people. And this is going to, like I said, bite them in the ass. Now, that 15 seconds later, after the minimap looks like this, 15 seconds later, after the minimap looks like this, the choke is still empty. The choke is still empty. Now, Tsunami does reset. They do stop chasing out here. Now, there are a few flash waves down, but I don't think that's a big deal. The main choke is still clear. So, to all they know, Infamy has no one on the dungeon, and they have no one on the main choke. Now, Infamy, as you can see, they have not made contact yet. That is a corner there. They don't know. They don't actually see each other yet. Now, if you have ever played a game with a mini map and you have some experience with war games, you would be able to know this. But Infamy, they will have a main gate push. If anyone's been watching the map, it's clear to see they will have a main gate push and a dungeon gate side push. But Tsunami, to all they know, they feel like both things are safe, and I think they really did believe that everything was safe, because this is what happens next. Now, Infamy pushes both sides, and I'm not sure if it's by intention or by accident or pure coincidence, but the dungeon team makes contact first for Infamy. And as you saw, Tsunami was up here. They were up here before in this little gap, but they're now running back towards the dungeon because a call that was made for the dungeon. And thank God for Infamy that these people made contact first, because this team is extremely charismatic and everyone wants to help them. Tsunami did leave a team here to hold the choke. Like I said, 6 people can hold a choke from 12 people, 20 people even, if you play it correctly. And my God, they successfully held that choke. You can see there's almost no one left. But Infamy strolls in the main choke. Infamy just walks in, and I would be confused if I was Infamy as to how that happened. But Infamy is taking what they can get here, and they're just walking through a choke. Now, sometimes people can say that the invulnerabilities were on, and it is possible to actually walk in with invulnerabilities if you plan it that way. But at this point in the game, it was not actually being done. And you can see here, I actually have some screenshots of tornadoes landing on the choke. These are all people getting knocked up at that exact moment in time, in that exact fight. And there's also tanks and AoE stuns plugging up the choke. You can see the blue health bars are indeed going down. These are people getting hit by the stun. So whether or not they were breaking immunities intentionally or not, they were breaking immunities. Perhaps a misplay by Infamy, but definitely a misplay by Tsunami to let them walk in. So what ends up happening was Tsunami ends up winning the main choke. Now they finally realize what's going on. They push back the main choke so successfully. You saw all those people walking in here earlier. The flood came out, and they plugged it back up entirely. But you can kind of guess what happens next. Once again, I have the mini map outlined. You see all this blue now from the dungeon area, as opposed to the main gate area. So if we turn to our left, we can kind of guess what we're going to see. Tsunami once again overcommitted attention to a choke, and Infamy now walks for free through the dungeon. And even through the downstairs rat corner, the hardest thing to ever push through. You can hold that with one tank. It's absolutely a tragedy that they got through. But I think there's a lot to learn from this. So at this point, the brawl ensues. The main fight is now between the dungeon choke and the main choke. Tsunami owning position on the point. They have all the range DPS with so much space to work with, but they don't know where to go. I'm not sure what's going on. I was kind of watching the stream, to be honest, and then after this happened, I turned on main comms to see what was going on, but I did not catch it. So the main brawl is here. It's just a brawl now, and when a brawl breaks out on a very defensive-sided map with terrible chokes, in my opinion, if you're the offensive-sided team, this is your best case scenario, where you make sure that the scenario of defensive-sided advantages, such as chokes, numbers advantages, and positional advantages of owning more space on the point, do not come into play. And you can see that although Tsunami has so many more people and they're winning fights, this guy's looking over here. These people are running here, and it's just like reduce, reuse, recycle. Here we have some comments from the casters. Now, I'm going to talk about the respawn timers now. The respawn timer, you die, you maybe have a gray screen for about 5 to 10 seconds. Then you basically just spawn in. Yeah, sure, you're not full health, but you just pop a regen or something. For your heal, you can heal yourself up. You can eat a food or something, and you have 20 seconds to walk. It generally takes you 20 seconds to back on the point. So if you wipe a certain amount of people, they're not going to be there for 30 seconds. So if you make a decisive engagement, you have a 30-second window to make a play, and in this space, that play, especially with the objective not being active yet for 2 minutes, is to retake as many of these advantages as you can. Sure, you made a mistake of holding the choke. You gave up the advantage of the choke. But to be honest, I do think Tsunami has better static play. I mean, I am a little biased. And I do believe that they do have a better brawling strategy, as we have actually been scrimming a lot and finding brawls devolving, similar to a lot of day one fights. And we've developed brawl strategies. Problem is to make it very just objective. To put it objectively, during this 30-second period of time, it's not a true 30 seconds, but 30 seconds staggered for each person. If you do wipe a certain number of people, and you start to see you have the clear numbers advantage at that moment, from that moment on, especially while the point is not active, when there is no minigame confining you and limiting what you can do and where you can go, I would retake these choke advantages because they are the only reason why you would ever pick this map. You do not want to pick this map if you do not get these advantages. And so I would have plugged up the choke immediately. To be honest, sometimes you see people left on the site, but we're going to go over in a later match. Actually, a Hurricane is our alliance guild that did very well in day two, round one, and how they dealt with that. But at the end of the day, you do need to find a way. Although you might have to make some sacrifices, you do need to regain these advantages. And like I said, when you get some of these advantages, sometimes they're not just free on the ground to pick up. Oftentimes, when you make a decision to gain one of these advantages, you oftentimes will find yourself that decision by nature causes you to sacrifice or trade another advantage, a lesser advantage if it was a good decision. And by making more of these profitable trades, you essentially will climb up and gain incrementally more advantages until your stack is so big you just smack people with your giant schlong and win everything. So that's something about the 30-second respawn timer on this point. Uh, watching this match, definitely, I'm sure a lot of people were complaining about respawns and brawls, but in my opinion, there is a way to go about it. And like I said, every team is subject to the same conditions. At the end of the day, you do need to win. And even if the conditions are not to your liking, if you want to win the game, you have to play by the rules of the game. And in this tournament, until the rules change, this is something we can walk away from and take away, so we can learn from this mistake that Tsunami made. So 1 minute later, the brawl is still going on. Obviously, that is a very hard brawl to recover from. Not easy. Like I said, 30 seconds is not a big window of time. During that time, you need to win the fight, regain control of the choke, and the objective. At least now you do. Back then, it was easier because the objective was not active. So too bad for Tsunami. They ended up losing their opportunity to hold the chokes. And the fight in brawls. Now, keep in mind this is 19 minutes remaining in the fight. The fight has just started, and we're going to see how long this brawl goes on. Now, one thing to note is Tsunami is winning these brawls in the site control, but Infamy actually ends up being the first to cap. You'll often see this happening sometimes. Perhaps a team member or the designated capper, ideally cappers, multiple, is more geared for capping. This would mean collision resist, stun resist, as well as stun chance. Other things come into play, such as your class, most notably Sword and Shield Wands or Templars, and also Steel Hearts or Sword and Shield Spears have some tools that make them more suitable to capping. And I think a lot of guilds understand this, but I do not see a lot of guilds taking action to gear specifically for this. And we're going to see that actually come into play. Sometimes this can really make a break. In an RNG game of stun chance or not, you need every advantage you can get. And if someone really wants to be a designated capper, they need to understand this and actually do something about it and put some gear on or switch some yellow runes on for stun resist and do something about it. So here we can see the scoreboard at this point. Tsunami is absolutely destroying them. They're winning every fight, and we're going to see that the 37 to 18 body count is a huge gap. They have almost twice the number of people on the point at any given time if they were looking at the point. And that's going to come into play later on. Blue and Grenton said that Tsunami has so much more control over the site that if they can ever get a cap off, Infamy is in big trouble. And we see that later on, 17 minutes into the fight, Tsunami actually flips a cap, which is great. The Infamy cap has expired because they've been losing the fights. And Tsunami nearly wipes Infamy. You can see that we're in a similar situation now to the start of the point, the very start of the match, where they've now funneled Tsunami back into the choke. And if you look at this red zone, it's all Tsunami. Sure, there's a couple tanks here, but what are they going to do? You can just stop them and interrupt them. At least that's what you should know. And now it's time to start funneling Infamy back into the chokes and regain the advantages that make this fight worth defending. And that's 17 minutes, but just 20 seconds later at 16:40, it doesn't happen. And you now see people are still coming in. I'm not sure if this was the same reason for earlier, if they didn't have designated teams for each choke, if the terms weren't being defined, so they didn't know which choke was which or what to call them. But this is definitely a preparational or macro difference, in my opinion. That's something to keep in mind. It's incredibly important that moving on, anyone who watches this video, you need to see these opportunities and close these doors immediately. So Tsunami's cap rises very fast. Infamy then responds by, like I said, just walking through the chokes, which you cannot, in a normal world you should not be able to do. And Infamy capped the point. Infamy just overall has a higher success rate capping. They don't end up having to spin F for so long. And like I said, that's a stat matchup between your cap defenders, your Nirma swords, and your cappers. Later on, of course, we're just going to speed things along. 15 minutes. So 2 minutes have passed since Tsunami's most recent opportunity to stop the bleeding. Tsunami gets their first full cap. Of course, you can see Infamy keeps on capping. They have more because, like I said, they're just winning the cap battle on the objective. But like I said, Tsunami is the only one to, because they have more numbers on the point and they're just wiping Infamy more, they are more likely to for first full cap. So they do get the first full cap, they clamp objective, and they completely wipe Infamy off the leaderboard. Now, when you are actually like this, we're going to go into this a little bit in depth. Although a team is in occupancy, the square is no longer in action. I know it shows it's glowing right now, but it's only because the pop-up on the UI is still there. This square is going to disappear, and it is going to look exactly like this, meaning you do not have to be on the point, and you still own it. Now, shortly after, I believe Infamy will actually cap, but we will, once again, I do not see a reason why this situation could not have happened again. They had a situation where they had an opportunity to stop the bleeding with the cap open, which is you have to decide between gaining a positional advantage to win the fight, or you have to choose between prioritizing the objective. At which point, it's an extremely delicate balance that you can only really afford to do when you are high in percentage, so you can tick down a little bit and still be healthy, or when the enemy team is low, so that you can let them tick up and still have time to regain ground. But here, they miss an opportunity with unfavorable conditions, with a hard decision to make. And here, they have no hard decision to make. They own the site. The site is now inactive. There's no body count minigame active. And we're going to see that at some point between 15 minutes and 12 minutes, within that 3 minutes, Infamy get back on the site. They continue walking in to the chokes, and they get a cap off because they are just better at better spec for capping. Their capper is better spec for capping. Now here, Infamy and Tsunami, once again, I'm not sure what this is actually. I think this is just a brawl. I think I'm just trying to show that the continuous back and forth is happening. The fight is happening here in a corner far away from the chokes. That's the dungeon choke. That's the main door. That's the rat hole. The fight is happening in so many places that that cannot transition into plugging a choke. Another brawl here. And just another brawl here. I think you get the point. Now, Infamy is ticking up extremely slowly. This is 10 minutes and 23 seconds. This is 11 minutes and 57 seconds. They have been trying to cap for 2 minutes, and they've only gained 20%. And Tsunami caps immediately almost. This is when you start to see that this is the case in the matches at halftime, you should now know that you cannot let them get the cap ever. This is now time to wake up and figure out how you can gain the objective advantage. Obviously, sometimes this is handled by being more stat prepared or having a gear set ready for cappers, having a dedicated team like we saw in Straw Hats, like we will see in Straw Hats. Sorry, later on. Sorry to spoil. Or by just gaining a fight advantage by plugging up chokes and retaking incremental advantages and tactical advantages. But by doing neither, this is what happens. So somewhere later on, during the same cap attempt at 6 minutes, so this has been going on for Infamy has been trying to cap for 12 minutes, and they've been unsuccessful. Infamy finally clumps into the corner, and we start to notice that there's none of them on the point, at least no significant amount, and they're all in this little area here. This is now Tsunami's opportunity to push them back through the choke. So they kind of realize that this is what you need to do. You need to regain the tactical advantages to win fights. Even though you're already winning fights, you need to take every advantage you can get, like Nisa, like these really good guilds do. But as I mentioned before, look at this. The gauge for Infamy is on the second half. Like I said, if the gauge for the enemy team is a lower half, you can afford to give them this much. Because by the time they're at 80, they're all off the point. It doesn't matter. You're going to regain ground, you're going to win. And they can't even get back in. If you are high and you own it and you're ticking or you're just trying to tick and you're winning the fight, you can afford to do it and end up back here because now they're gone and you can tick up fast. But this is the exact opposite scenario. This is the hardest decision time to make at the hardest moment to make the hardest kind of play. Although you are stronger, this is not what I believe to be the right time. And that's what happened here. And I think the casters did do a good job of pointing out that Tsunami did walk off the point. But I thought I'd do a little analysis as to the reasons why this opportunity in particular was so difficult and why it was very likely that what happened happened. So Tsunami takes the opportunity to use and gain the choke point advantage. However, like I said, there's a time and place. And you can actually see all these tanks, these really good tanks, really good. This is our Shot Caller, Rady, Easter, Crusader, these super good tanks. Walk, these are Ethereum players, former Ethereum players. And look at all this space. But like I said, this number is ticking up. 76. You know, we're in the choke now. Around this time, the body count is 923. We have 9 people on the point, and probably none of us are dead. I think none of us are dead. Everyone is standing here for positional advantage. Everyone is fighting here for positional advantage. But like I said, there's a time and place. You can still fight for positional advantage when you are at high percentage, but you need to designate who is going to do it. And there cannot be any slippage tolerance. Because the second you pass a certain threshold or people miscommunicate and everyone walks off the point, Infamy will rise up just as fast. So somehow, Infamy makes it back to the zone once again. And I'm going to say how. They plugged up the dungeon choke successfully, but you can probably guess what happened. They walked into the main choke. Yep, they walked into the main choke. These people were not on the site before. You can see the site was relatively empty. Here. This is the dungeon choke. These people were not here before. So Infamy gets the cap. And the way they get the cap is a lesson for all people watching. And I'm sure everyone who participated in the tournament knows it by now. But this is 99%, 99.2%, and the count is 26 to 24. Infamy cap it 5 seconds later. And this is at 5 minutes and 20 seconds. This is a screenshot from 5 minutes and 22 seconds. There are 1, 2, 3, 4, and probably a fifth red player outside of the zone. Now, I know this person is about to kill this person. It's probably a good move. But what are these 3 people doing? What are these 4 people doing? Sorry. There are no threats here. They can easily just stand here and do the same exact thing while contributing to the point. And to be honest, I don't think Infamy would have capped here. Because look how dominant Tsunami is in the fights. Now, at this point, Infamy owns the site. They actually do not need to be on the point. they are now in the power position where Tsunami has to cap. Now, at this point, it's important to know that although you don't own the point, you are also technically in the same power position or the same free position to take positional and fight advantages. Because you also don't need to play the body count game. Sure, your tanks need to be focused on capping, but they can just do that in Narnia. And the enemy tanks and your tanks can be circle jerking each other on the point while the fight happens anywhere else. All you need to do is win the fight for 30 seconds so that you have 30 seconds to now focus on the objective and help your tanks with the objective. But this is clearly not something that guilds on day one are aware of. And you see Tsunami, although they have during the objective opening, they are winning positional advantages on the outskirts of the fight to gain space and pincer people. And I'm going to just show a quick little graphic as to what a pincer is. Pincer is this. If you are the green people and you are firing flash waves or AoEs of any kind onto the enemy and they are on an objective in the middle, this is the mana waste boonstone, by the way. This is the ideal scenario. And we're going to go over the opposite, where if you are in the middle and you are trying to aim AoEs at other people on the outside who are outside relative to you and the wall, you can try and aim your AoEs as best as you want. At best, you will hit a few people and everything else goes into the wall. This is the worst case scenario. And so these are some of the things that that you can take into your play to win, in my opinion, brawls. This is one of the tips that I was mentioning earlier. And gain some advantages during the brawl. Because during a brawl, the only thing that really wins out, considering gear, there's no strategy anymore. There's no engagements. There's no easy thing you can do to win a brawl, except either your shot caller finds a way to communicate ways to pick up advantages, like holding chokes, or each individual player or static knows to position consistently and use their WASD keys to move in a way that consistently picks up power-ups and advantages to eventually accumulate to a win. Now at this point, you see that Tsunami, although they get outside position when the objective is active and the body count game is active, when the body count game is inactive, they are somehow now all inside the square. And Infamy is now owning the space outside. You can see all their spear daggers are outside the space. Even the people on the point are owning the outside space on the point. It is completely flip-flopped. And I don't know if it's intentional or not, but I do think I would like to credit Infamy as we have good history with them. I mean, not good history, but we have a memorable history with them. And I would credit them as their shot caller, to my opinion, to my knowledge, is Rukon, who was the shot caller for La Nepisa when we fought them. The better part of La Nepisa, in my opinion. He absolutely destroyed us. And that's actually why I ended up making something like this, because this is exactly how we lost to them. I feel like they knew what they were doing. At least I feel like somehow intuitively some people knew what they were doing. So that's the objective. Completely flip-flopped priorities from the side of Tsunami. And then on the objective, sorry, that was the fight positioning. Completely flip-flopped priorities and time and place from Tsunami. And then on the objective side, to my opinion, I mean, I'm not trying to dox our strategy, but at this point in time, and I'm sure it's changed, Tio, unfortunately though, the only solo capper, he's the only person capping. When he's dead, no one's capping. It was just him. I think became very apparent at the end. It's too easy to stop, and so we were not spec'd to cap the point. I'm definitely going to recommend you watch it. I'm not going to spoil the ending. I'm going to recommend you watch it. And this is the ending. So, the caster summary. Infamy definitely had one person disconnect from the match, but Tsunami was so dominant in the fights that it definitely didn't seem like one person made that much of a combat difference. Tsunami outlasted Infamy in every fight. They seem to have a more healthy and sustained HP bars on the point, and this is definitely due to either composition, gear, or just party play. And that's, like I said earlier, one of our strengths. So I'm going to pick this up later, and we're going to continue the video later.